Welcome to Midnight Histories, where historical figures come to entertain your sleep. Ah, yes, the land of myths and shadows, where the winds whisper secrets too terrible to hear, and the soil itself is steeped in the blood of forgotten rituals. A cold desert night in the Four Corners region of the American Southwest, the wind howls and rattles the bones of the earth, as if the very land itself is restless, seeking solace from some unspoken curse. Darkness suffocates the landscape, draping in a cloak so thick and suffocating that even the stars seem to tremble, casting dim, reluctant light on the ground below. It is a place where silence reigns, broken only by the occasional creak of ancient, gnarled trees, as they grown under the weight of centuries, their roots deep in the soil, tangled with the forgotten histories of those who walked before. This is not just any place. No, it is a land cursed, a place that has borne witness to atrocities that remain untold, a land where the veil between his world and the next is frighteningly thin. There are creatures whose names must never be spoken, for to speak them is to summon them, to draw their attention from the abyss where they dwell, waiting for those foolish enough to invoke their presence. These creatures, these abominations, are not mere figments of imagination or the whispers of the wind. No, they are something far worse. They are part of the very land itself, born of its darkness, its sorrow, its hunger. The stories of these beings are told in hushed tones, whispered by the firelight, never spoken aloud except in the company of the most trusted or the most fearful. They are creatures of deception, of malevolence, their very existence a mockery of nature itself. Their shape-shifting nature allows them to slip through the cracks in reality, wearing the faces of those you love, those you trust, until it is too late. Their eyes, cold and empty, burn with an intelligence that is alien to the human soul. They have no compassion, no empathy, only an insatiable thirst for destruction, for the chaos that they leave in their wake. It is said that those who encounter them are forever changed, their minds warped by the encounter, their souls tainted by the evil that lurks beneath the skin of this earth. Now, of course, we must acknowledge that some might dismiss these stories as nothing more than the fanciful ramblings of superstitious minds, the kind of tales spun by old folk around a crackling fire, meant to entertain, and perhaps scare children into behaving. But, dear listeners, let's not be so quick to dismiss the wisdom of the past. For in these ancient tales lie kernels of truth, and truth, no matter how uncomfortable, often hides in the most unlikely of places. The creature, known to some as the naaldlooshii, the Skinwalker, is a being so vile, so terrifying, that its very name causes shivers to run down the spine of any who have been raised in the shadow of these stories. It is a creature that has walked the earth for centuries, and its origins, like most things of darkness, are lost in time, buried beneath the sands of the desert and the dust of forgotten ages. Some say that the Skinwalker was once a medicine man, a healer of great power and wisdom, someone who understood the balance of life and death, of the spiritual and the physical. But such power comes at a cost, for to walk too closely with the spirits, to hold dominion over life itself, is to invite madness into one's soul. And so, the story goes, this medicine man, consumed by greed and ambition, sought to unlock even greater powers, powers that should never be disturbed. In his quest for immortality, he performed the ultimate taboo, the unthinkable, the unforgivable. He killed his own kin. This act of betrayal, the severing of the sacred bond between family and spirit, shattered him body and soul, and in his desperation, he turned to the forbidden, to the dark arts of the witchery that have been whispered about in the most secretive corners of the world. The result of this unholy transformation was the Skinwalker, a creature that walks upon the earth in the guise of man, but whose soul is twisted beyond recognition. It wears the skins of animals, the faces of the loved ones you cherish, its form changing like the shifting shadows of dusk. This monstrous being is driven by an insatiable hunger, a thirst for power and domination, and it is said that it can only be stopped by those who are willing to confront the darkness within themselves, to face the twisted, terrifying truth that lies at the heart of this creature's existence. The Skinwalker, with its wretched ways, is a being of contradictions. It is both human and not. Its appearance an ever-shifting mass of flesh and fur, its motives as elusive as the desert winds. But perhaps the most disturbing thing of all is the creature's intelligence. It is not a mindless beast, driven solely by hunger or instinct. No, the The Skinwalker possesses a cunning far beyond that of the average animal or even the average man. It is a being that knows fear, that understands the fragility of human life, and it exploits these weaknesses with terrifying precision. It watches from the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to slip into your life like a thief in the night, where in the face of someone you trust, someone you love. And in that moment, in that instant when the creature stands before you, its eyes glow with the cold light of death, you'll know that it is already too late. It is said that the Skinwalker can sense the fear of its prey, and it thrives on it, feeding on the terror that it elicits. It is a creature that lives for the thrill of the chase, for the moment when its victim finally realizes a terrible truth. They are not alone, and what they see before them is not human. The curse of the Skinwalker is not just the creature itself, but the fear it sows in the hearts of those who know of it, those who hear the stories and feel the chill of the wind that carries its name. It is a curse that lingers long after the creature is gone, a curse that haunts the soul and twists the mind. For even the bravest of men, the most hardened of hearts, cannot escape the terror that follows in the wake of the Skinwalker. The tales are passed down from generation to generation, whispered in the dead of night, when the wind howls and the darkness closes in. These stories, though they may seem exaggerated, are never forgotten, for to forget them is to invite disaster. It is said that the land itself holds the memories of these creatures, that the very earth trembles in fear at the thought of them, that the curse of the Skinwalker cannot be escaped. And so, we are left with these stories, these old, haunting tales of the creatures that walk among us, waiting for the day when they will emerge once again from the shadows, ready to claim their next victim. Whether or not you believe in them, dear listeners, is irrelevant. What matters is the fact that the stories remain woven into the very fabric of the land, passed down through the ages, like the wind that howls across the desert, unceasing and relentless. To understand the fear of the Navajo people, we must go back to the sacred roots of their world, where life and sorcery are one. Now, to begin this tale, we must first understand a central concept that has pervaded the fabric of Navajo culture for centuries. This is not a concept born of modern horror stories or exaggerated folklore told around campfires. No, this is a Skinwalker or naaldlooshii, as it is known in the Navajo language. The Skinwalker is not merely a creature or a monster. It is a being, a dark and ancient force that lives at the very heart of the Navajo worldview. It is a force tied to the deepest and most forbidden aspects of life itself, a force whose presence is feared by even the bravest and most hardened of hearts. The Skinwalker, as described in Navajo lore, is a witch, a person who, through unspeakable acts, has crossed the boundaries of the natural world and gained the ability to transform into any animal they choose. This shape-shifting ability is not a gift, but a curse, a transformation that comes with a price so steep that it is considered taboo to even speak of it openly. For you see, the Skinwalker is not simply a creature of magic. It is a creature born from the deepest darkness of human desire and weakness. It is the product of a person who, driven by greed, ambition, or a hunger for power, has abandoned the natural order and embraced a malevolent form of sorcery. To become a Skinwalker, the witch must commit an unimaginable act. They must kill a close family member, a brother, a sister, a parent, in order to sever the sacred bonds that tie them to humanity. This act, this betrayal of the most fundamental human connection, is the key that unlocks the path to becoming a Skinwalker, a being who is both human and animal, both living and dead, both real and unreal. This, then, is the true horror of the Skinwalker, not the shape-shifting itself, not the terrifying forms it takes, but the corruption of the soul that must occur for one to wield such power. The Skinwalker is a being of contradictions. It is a human who has forsaken their humanity. It is a creature that walks among us, dressed in the skins of animals, yet whose eyes burn with a cold, cruel intelligence that is wholly otherworldly. It is a being that can slip into your life unnoticed, where in the face of someone you trust, someone you love, only to reveal its true nature when it is too late. And it is this blending of human and animal, this crossing of boundaries, that makes the Skinwalker so deeply terrifying. It is a being that exists in the liminal spaces between the known and the unknown, between life and death, between man and beast. It is an entity that exists outside the rules, outside the laws that govern the natural world, and it is this very lawlessness that fills the Navajo people with fear. The Skinwalker is not a simple monster lurking in the shadows. No, it is something far worse. It is a reflection of the deepest fears and darkest impulses within the human soul. To encounter a skinwalker is to confront the terrible truth that the boundary between humanity and the animal world is not as firm as we would like to believe. It is to acknowledge that the darkness within us is not some external force, but something that can arise from within, something that can consume us if we are not careful. The stories of the Skinwalker are passed down from generation to generation, whispered in the dark corners of Navajo homes, told by the elders to the young, to remind them of the dangers that lie in the shadows. These are not tales meant to entertain, but to warn. They are lessons hard-earned and bitter, passed down through the ages to ensure that the next generation does not forget the price of forsaking the natural order. In Navajo culture, the Skinwalker is not just a story. It is a living, breathing presence. It is a force that is felt, even if it is not seen. It is a shadow that hangs over the land, a reminder that the world is not as simple as it seems. It is a dark entity that exists in the spaces between the visible and the invisible, the real and the unreal. And it is this ever-present threat that keeps the people of the Navajo Nation in a state of constant vigilance. The fear of the Skinwalker is not born from superstition alone, but from the deeply ingrained belief that there are forces in the world that cannot be understood, cannot be controlled, and cannot be escaped. The Skinwalker is not something to be confronted head-on, but something to be avoided, something to be feared from a distance. It is a force that preys on weakness, on fear, on vulnerability. It is said that the Skinwalker can sense these emotions, can track them like a predator stalking its prey. The more afraid you are, the more likely it is that the Skinwalker will come for you, drawn to your fear like a moth to a flame. And yet, the Skinwalker is not merely a beast to be feared. It is a being that embodies the very essence of evil. It is a creature that exists solely for the purpose of sowing chaos, confusion, and destruction. Its actions are not driven by a need to survive or thrive, but by a sadistic pleasure in the suffering of others. The Skinwalker, in its many forms, is a reflection of the worst parts of the human soul, the parts that long to destroy, to consume, to corrupt. It is a creature that feeds on the suffering of others, and it is this insatiable hunger that makes it so terrifying. To understand the fear of the Navajo people, then we must understand the nature of this dark entity. We must understand that the Skinwalker is not just a shape-shifting creature, but a reflection of the darkness that resides within all of us. It is a creature born of our deepest fears, our most terrible desires, and it is this understanding that makes the Skinwalker so terrifying. It is not just a monster, but a part of us, a part of the human condition that we would rather not acknowledge, but cannot escape. And so, the stories of the Skinwalker continue, passed down to the generations, a reminder of the darkness that lies beneath the surface of the world, waiting to emerge when we least expect it. These stories are not told to frighten, but to warn. They are called to remember that the line between humanity and the supernatural is not as clear as we might like to believe. Once again, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, so we have more motivation to produce better quality products. The Navajo Nation, one of the largest and most spiritually complex indigenous tribes in the American Southwest, has long been a subject of fascination and reverence for both outsiders and insiders alike. Now, it is crucial to understand, as we delve into the history and lore of this ancient people, that the Navajo are not merely a group defined by their location or their language. No, they are a people deeply intertwined with the very land they inhabit. The vast stretches of desert and canyon that make up the Navajo Nation are not just geographical features. They are sacred spaces, imbued with meaning and power, and they shape every aspect of Navajo life. To speak of the Navajo is to speak of the land itself, for their connection to it is inextricable and profound. The spiritual complexity of the Navajo people can be traced back to their ancient belief systems, which are rooted in a deep understanding of balance, harmony, and interconnectedness. The Navajo believe that all things in the universe, be they human, animal, plant, or spirit, are interrelated and must be kept in balance. To disrupt this balance, to act in a way that is out of harmony with nature, is to invite disaster, to invite the wrath of the spirits that govern the natural world. It is this sacred balance that is the foundation of Navajo spirituality, and it is through this lens that we must view the terrifying figure of the Skinwalker, a creature so deeply tied to the Navajo worldview that it is almost impossible to separate the two. The Skinwalker, or naaldlooshii, is a dark and twisted figure in Navajo lore, one that embodies the dangers of disrupting the sacred balance of life. It is said that the Skinwalker is a witch, a person who, through acts of dark sorcery, has abandoned their humanity in exchange for the power to transform into any animal they choose. But the act of becoming a Skinwalker is not one taken lightly, for it requires a terrible price to be paid, a price that is both spiritual and personal. In order to gain the power to shapeshift, the individual must first commit the ultimate taboo. They must kill a close family member. This act, this betrayal of the most fundamental human bond, is what turns a person into something else, something unnatural, something filled with darkness. And it is this darkness, this evil, that the Skinwalker embodies as it stalks the land, a creature of both the human and the animal world, neither one nor the other, but something far worse. The Skinwalker is a creature that operates in the shadows, a being whose very existence is a threat to the sacred balance of the universe. It is a creature that feeds on fear and chaos, a being that uses its powers to sow discord and confusion wherever it goes. But what makes the Skinwalker so terrifying, so utterly chilling, is not just its ability to change shape, to become an animal, but the fact that it is so thoroughly human in its malevolence. It is a creature that knows the deepest fears of those it hunts, a creature that can take on the form of loved ones, of family members and friends, only to turn that trust against its victims in the most horrific ways. It is a creature that has no regard for the sacred bonds that bind families together, a creature that seeks to tear those bonds apart, to shatter the very foundations of human connection. The Navajo people, in their wisdom, have long understood the nature of the Skinwalker, and it is this understanding that has shaped their approach to the supernatural. To the Navajo, the Skinwalker is not just a story, not just myth. It is a living, breathing entity, one that operates in the world just as surely as any human or animal. It is a presence that must be respected, if not feared, for to ignore the Skinwalker, to pretend that it does not exist, is to invite disaster. It is said that the Skinwalker is a creature that operates in the shadows, preying on those who are weak, who are vulnerable, who have strayed from the path of balance. It is a reminder that the natural world is not just a place of beauty and harmony, but a place of danger and darkness, a place where the forces of good and evil are in constant tension. And so, the Navajo people continue to live in the shadow of the Skinwalker, their lives shaped by a deep reverence for the natural world and the spirits that inhabit it. It is a life of balance, of harmony, and of constant vigilance. For the Skinwalker, like the land itself, is ever present, lurking in the corners of their world, a reminder of the fragile nature of life and the power of the spirits that govern it. Now, if we are to delve into the very heart of Navajo spirituality, there's a concept that must be understood, one that serves as the cornerstone of their worldview. This concept, known as Hozo, represents a state of balance, harmony, and beauty, and is a principle so deeply ingrained in the Navajo way of life that it cannot be overstated. To the Navajo people, Hozo is not merely a philosophical idea. No, it is a living, breathing reality, a state of being that governs every aspect of their existence. To live in Hozo is to live in harmony with the universe, with nature, and with the spirits that inhabit the world around us. It is a state in which every action, every word, every thought is aligned with the natural forces that govern life itself. It is a state in which the individual is not separate from the world around them, but is, in fact, an integral part of it. Now, Hozo is not something that can be attained easily, nor is it a goal that can be achieved in a single lifetime. It is a lifelong pursuit, a journey that demands constant attention and vigilance. To live in Hozo is to constantly seek balance in every aspect of one's life, to walk the delicate line between the spiritual and the physical, between the visible and the invisible. It is a way of being that requires an understanding of the interconnectedness of all things, human, animal, plant, and spirit. To live in Hozo is to understand that nothing exists in isolation, that every action has a ripple effect, that every choice made ripples out into the fabric of the universe, affecting not only the individual but also the world around them. The Navajo people believe that the world is full of powerful forces, both seen and unseen, and it is only through maintaining a harmonious relationship with these forces that one can live a life of Hozo. These forces are not simply abstract ideas or distant, unknowable entities. They are real, tangible forces that shape every moment of existence. The earth, the sky, the the plants, the animals, the stars. They are all alive, infused with spirit, and it is through interacting with these forces in a respectful and mindful manner that one can align oneself with Hozo. But, and this is important, Hozo is not merely about living in harmony with nature. It is also about living in harmony with oneself, with one's community, and with the spirits that guide and protect us. In Navajo culture, it is believed that every person has a personal spirit, an inner essence that must be nurtured and protected if one is to live a life of Hozo. This spirit is not something that can be separated from the body. Rather, it is the very core of one's being, the source of one's strength and vitality. To live in Hozo is to honor and protect the spirit, to ensure that it remains pure and untainted by the darkness that may lurk within. This is where the concept of Hozoji comes into play, for it is the opposite of Hozo, the state of imbalance, disorder, and chaos. To be in Hozoji is to live in a state of conflict, of dissonance, where the natural order is disrupted and the spirit is weighed down by negativity, fear, and anger. The Navajo believe that the world is constantly shifting between these two states, Hozo and Hozoji, and it is up to each individual to maintain the balance, to ensure that they do not fall into the chaotic, destructive forces of Hozoji. It is not enough to merely exist. One must live with purpose, with intention, and with respect for the forces that govern the universe. Now, this balance is not just about living in peace with nature or the spirits, but also about living in balance with one's community. The Navajo people place great importance on community and the relationships that bind people together. It is through these relationships that one can find strength and support, and it is through these relationships that one can maintain their connection to Hozo. To live in Hozo is to live with compassion, to act with kindness and generosity, and to always consider the well-being of others before one's own desires. It is a way of being that demands selflessness, humility, and a deep sense of responsibility to others. And so, the Navajo people, through the practice of Hozo, seek to live in a state of balance, of beauty, and of harmony with the world around them. It is not an easy path, and it is one that requires constant effort and vigilance. But it is a path that leads to peace, to fulfillment, and to a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all things. It is a path that, if followed, can lead one to the very heart of the universe itself, where the forces of nature and spirit converge in perfect unity. And in this unity, one finds a true meaning of Hozo, a life of beauty, balance, and harmony with the world, the self, and the spirits that walk alongside us. The role of the medicine man, or Atelii, in Navajo society is one of profound significance, a role that stretches back through generations, embedded in the very fabric of their cultural and spiritual existence. Now, it must be understood, dear listeners, that the medicine man is not simply a healer in the modern sense of the word, someone who applies remedies to cure physical ailments or prescribes potions to ease pain. No, the medicine man is far more than that. He is a keeper of balance, the intermediary between the physical world and the spiritual realm, the one who navigates the delicate intersection of the seen and the unseen. It is through him that the balance of the universe is maintained, for he alone possesses the knowledge to commune with the spirits, to harness the powers that flow through the earth, the sky, and the unseen world of spirits and forces beyond human comprehension. But, and here is where the true depth of his role emerges, the medicine man is not merely a force for good. He is, in fact, the only one who truly understands the darkness that exists in the world. You see, to maintain balance, to heal, one must understand both light and shadow, both creation and destruction, both order and chaos. The medicine man is a paradox. He is the healer, yes, but he is also the one who must confront the darkness, the one who must know the ways of evil in order to protect his people from it. For it is only through understanding the forces of destruction and disorder that the medicine man can ensure that harmony is restored. The path to healing is never simple. It is fraught with dangers, with dark forces that can easily overtake the unprepared, the untrained. The medicine man, therefore, is not just a wise figure of healing. He is a figure of immense power that comes from his ability to confront and harness the very forces that others fear to acknowledge. He is the one who holds a knowledge of rituals, chants, and ceremonies that can call upon the spirits, both good and bad, to either aid or thwart the intentions of those who seek to disturb the balance. But the medicine man's true power lies not just in his healing abilities, but in his understanding of the forces that lurk beneath the surface of the natural world, the spirits that dance in the shadows, the ones who feed on fear, chaos, and disorder. It is he who is called upon in times of great need, in moments when the very fabric of the world is threatened, when the spirits of darkness threaten to overwhelm the harmony of life. In these moments, the medicine man's role becomes ever more vital, for he alone can navigate the treacherous terrain between the two worlds, that of the physical and that of the spiritual. But there's a price to be paid for this knowledge, a cost that is both personal and spiritual. To understand the darkness, to commune with the forces that lie beyond the veil, is to risk one's soul. The medicine man walks a fine line, constantly at risk of being consumed by the very darkness he seeks to control. It is a life of constant vigilance, of maintaining balance not only in the world around him, but within himself. For the medicine man falters if he allows himself to be overwhelmed by the forces of evil. He risks not only his own destruction, but the destruction of those he has sworn to protect. And so, the medicine man is a solitary figure, one who must constantly confront his own fears and doubts, who must remain steadfast in his commitment to preserve balance, even in the face of the overwhelming darkness that seeks to pull him under. His wisdom is hard-earned, gained through years of study, practice, and communion with the spirits, but it is also a heavy burden, one that requires great sacrifice and immense courage. The people turn to medicine man not just for healing, but for guidance, for protection, and for understanding. They look to him to make sense of the world around them, to offer answers in times of crisis, to restore the delicate balance between light and darkness. But, as I mentioned before, the medicine man's role is not one of blind optimism or hope. It is a role of somber responsibility, one that requires an acceptance of both the beauty and the terror of the world. For the medicine man, to preserve the balance is to acknowledge that darkness exists, that chaos is as much a part of the natural order as peace and harmony. He is the one who stands between these forces, the one who understands their nature, and, perhaps most importantly, he is the one who carries the knowledge of how to keep them at bay. It is said that only the medicine man can truly understand the full scope of the world's power, its light and its dark, and that through this understanding he can heal, protect, and in some ways become a guardian against the very forces that threaten to undo the world. A skinwalker, or naaldlooshii in the Navajo tongue, which, when translated, means witted, he goes on all fours, is a creature so deeply embedded in the fabric of Navajo culture that it is difficult, perhaps even impossible, to extricate it from their worldview. To understand the full scope of this being, one must first acknowledge the ancient understanding of the relationship between the human and the spirit world, a relationship that is, to the Navajo, as intimate as it is dangerous. The skinwalker is not merely a monster or a creature that exists to frighten children. No, it is far more than that. It is a creature born from human ambition and a profound, disturbing betrayal. A skinwalker, according to the lore, is a person, a human being, who has turned away from the sacred laws that govern life and death, choosing instead a path of darkness and forbidden knowledge. The process by which one becomes a skinwalker is, in and of itself, deeply unsettling, for it is said that the individual must commit the most heinous of acts, the unthinkable, a crime so monstrous that it causes the very fabric of the universe to shudder in response. This act is the murder of a close family member, a brother, a sister, a parent, a blood relation who, once taken, severs the ties between the human and the natural world. This sacrilegious act allows the individual to transcend the boundaries of humanity, to transform, to take on the forms of the animals that roam the land. To kill, to break the most sacred bond of all, is to become something else, something not human, something inextricably tied to the forces of darkness and chaos. Once this step is taken, the skinwalker is no longer a mere human. It has become something else entirely, a shapeshifter, capable of adopting the forms of various animals, wolves, coyotes, bears, owls, or any other creature that roams the land. It is said that the skinwalker can even wear the skin of these animals, don their pelts as though they were garments, and walk among us, unnoticed, blending in with the world of the living, even as it harbors the soul of the murderer, of one who betrayed the laws of nature itself. Now, it is important to understand that the skinwalker is not simply a shapeshifter for the sake of transformation. No, there is a much deeper, more sinister nature to its power. The Skinwalker, in its new form, is not bound by the same physical limitations that the animal world faces. It can move with unnatural speed, with an eerie silence, and with a terrifying purpose. It is said that it can take on the form of any animal it desires, adopting their instincts, their speed, their senses, and more disturbingly, their cunning. But this transformation comes at a cost, for it is not a clean or simple process. The individual who becomes a Skinwalker is forever bound to the dark forces that have granted them this ability, cursed by the very power they sought to control. The Skinwalker is not just a creature of flesh and blood, but a force of malevolence and evil that feeds on fear, chaos, and suffering. It is said that the Skinwalker stalks its prey, waiting for the perfect moment to strike, to use its cunning and its unnatural abilities to bring terror and death to those who stand in its way. It is not bound by the laws of nature, by the rules that govern the world of the living, and it is in this lawlessness that the true horror of the Skinwalker lies. The Skinwalker exists beyond the rules, beyond the natural order, and it is this very nature that makes it so terrifying. To encounter a Skinwalker is to confront something that cannot be understood, something that defies all reason, all logic. It is a creature that cannot be explained by science or by the laws of nature. It is a being that lives in the liminal space between the human world and the world of spirits, existing in both but belonging to neither. And this is where the fear of the Skinwalker stems from. Its utter unpredictability, its ability to infiltrate our world, to take on the guise of something familiar, someone we trust, and use that trust to manipulate and destroy. And yet, despite its fearsome nature, the Skinwalker is not an entirely unstoppable force. There are those ancient practitioners of magic and healers who know the ways to ward off such creatures, who can recognize the signs of their presence and can fight back against them. But as you might expect, the knowledge of how to deal with a Skinwalker is not something that can be easily found, for it is knowledge that has been guarded for generations, hidden away by those who understand the dangers of the world in which the Skinwalker exists. For the Navajo people, the Skinwalker is not simply a tale to frighten children or a creature to be casually dismissed. It is a part of their living, breathing world, an entity that moves among them, a reminder of the darkness that can arise from the very human soul, a darkness that can never be fully defeated, only understood and guarded against. The Skinwalker, in the end, is a reflection of the human condition itself, of the potential for evil that lies within each of us, and of the consequences that arise when we step too far from the path of balance and order. It is a dark force, but it is also, paradoxically, a reminder of the very fragility of the world we live in. To understand the nature of the Skinwalker, one must first grasp the unimaginable cost that is demanded of those who seek to walk the shadowed path of this creature. The ultimate price, the cost that can never be repaid, is not simply the mastery of dark magic, nor the ability to shapeshift into the form of animals. No, the price is far more harrowing, far more devastating. To become a Skinwalker, a person must commit the most taboo act known to the Navajo people, an act so abhorrent, so horrifying, that it severs all ties to the natural order, to the moral code that binds humanity together. This act, the act that transforms a person into a Skinwalker, is the killing of a close family member, one's own brother, sister, parent, or child. It is the ultimate betrayal, the deepest rupture of the sacred bond that exists between the human soul and the natural world. To murder one's own flesh and blood is not merely a crime in the physical sense, but a spiritual transgression, a rupture that rends the very fabric of reality, leaving behind a soul so corrupted that it can never be fully healed. This act of violence is not one of anger or revenge. It is a ritual, a sacrifice that one willingly makes, trading the purity of human morality for the dark powers that come with the transformation into a Skinwalker. It is, in essence, the loss of one's humanity, the abandonment of all that is good and pure in exchange for a power that is as ancient as it is malevolent. You see, in the world of the Navajo, this act of fratricide is not just sin. It is a breaking of the natural law, a shattering of the sacred order that binds the physical and spiritual realms together. It is an act that is said to strip the soul of its essence, leaving behind a hollow, twisted thing, capable of terrifying deeds and unimaginable cruelty. The person who commits this act becomes something less than human, something neither animal nor man, a creature trapped between two worlds, both feared and despised. It is said that the ritual begins with the understanding that the victim must be a loved one, someone whom the perpetrator is deeply connected, for it is this emotional bond that is necessary to unlock the dark magic that lies dormant within the person's soul. The choice is not an easy one, but it is one that, once made, can never be undone. To commit such an act is to sever all ties with humanity, to reject the very principles of compassion, love, and empathy that define the human experience. It is to embrace the darkness, to step willingly into a world where morality no longer holds sway, where the only law is that of survival and power. And so, once the deed is done, once the family member has been slain, the person undergoes a transformation, a slow, painful metamorphosis in which they shed their human skin and take on the form of the very animals that roam the earth. But this transformation comes with a terrible price. For the person who becomes a skinwalker, the boundary between man and beast, between good and evil, becomes blurred. The animal forms that they take on are not mere disguises or illusions, but real, living forms, complete with the instincts, the senses, and the powers of the creatures they emulate. Yet, despite this new power, the skinwalker is still trapped in the human mind, haunted by the knowledge of the terrible act they have committed. They are cursed, bound to the darkness they have unleashed, and no amount of power can ever undo the damage that has been done. This, then, is a true cause of becoming a skinwalker, not just the power to shapeshift or the ability to walk in the shadows, but the eternal damnation of one soul. To step onto the path of the skinwalker is to sever all connections to the human world, to reject the very essence of what it means to be human. It is a journey that cannot be taken lightly, for once the path is chosen, there is no turning back. The person who becomes a skinwalker is forever marked, forever lost to the darkness, being trapped between worlds, forever haunted by the echo of their betrayal. The Navajo people, who understand the depth of this curse, view the skinwalker not just as a monster, but as a tragic figure, a person who has willingly cast aside their humanity in exchange for a power that can never bring peace, only suffering. The true horror of the skinwalker, then, is not the shape it takes or the terror it brings, but the soul that lies beneath the twisted, broken essence of a person who's paid the ultimate price for the ability to wield dark forces. The skinwalker is a living embodiment of betrayal and corruption, a creature that serves as a warning to all who would seek to forsake the natural order and embrace the darkness. The abilities of the skinwalker, naaldlooshii, are as varied as they are terrifying, for once the individual has taken that irreversible step, committing the most horrific and sacrilegious of acts, murdering a loved one, the power that is bestowed upon them is not just a simple transformation, but profound alteration of their very being, a metamorphosis that blurs the line between man and beast, between the human world and the spirit world, rendering them a creature both of flesh and shadow, trapped between two worlds, neither fully human nor fully animal. It is said, and indeed it is feared, that the skinwalker can shift its shape into a wide range of animals, each with its own distinct powers, and these creatures, once adopted, become a reflection of the dark power that flows through the skinwalker's veins. To take on the form of a wolf is to embrace the power of the hunter, of the relentless predator, the creature that prowls through the night. Its eyes glow in eerie, supernatural light, its senses honed to perfection, able to track its prey with unerring precision. A wolf, you see, is not just a simple animal in the eyes of Navajo. It is a being of both terror and respect, a creature that embodies both the ferocity and cunning necessary to survive in a world that offers no mercy. But the skinwalker's power does not stop at the wolf. No, it extends to other creatures as well, each with its own strengths, each with its own predatory nature. To become a fox, for example, is to take on the nature of the trickster, the sly, intelligent animal that moves through the world with a quiet, almost invisible grace, deceiving those who seek to capture it, always staying one step ahead. The fox is a creature of stealth, of cunning. In the form of a fox, the skinwalker is not only a predator, but a master deception, capable of infiltrating the lives of others, slipping into their world unnoticed, using their intelligence and guile to manipulate and deceive. But it is not only land creatures that a skinwalker can become, for the ability to shapeshift extends to the air as well, as the skinwalker can take a form of an owl, a creature long associated with wisdom and mystery, but also with death and the unseen forces that govern the world. The owl's silent flight, its wide, unblinking eyes, and its ability to move through the night undetected make it the perfect form for a skinwalker seeking to observe, to hunt, and to strike without warning. In the form of an owl, the skinwalker is not just a creature of the night, but a symbol of the darkness that moves unseen, a reminder that there are forces in the world that operate outside the realm of human understanding, forces that cannot be seen but are always present, watching, waiting. And then there's a coyote, a creature that embodies both the trickster and the scavenger, a being that survives by exploiting the weaknesses of others, using its wits and its speed to outlast its competitors. The coyote is both feared and admired by the Navajo, for it is a creature that operates on the fringes of society, living at the edge of civilization. And in the form of a coyote, the skinwalker becomes not just a predator, but an agent of chaos, a being that thrives on the disruption of the natural order, on sowing discord and confusion wherever it goes. It is said that when a skinwalker takes on the form of one of these animals, they are not merely mimicking the physical traits of creature, but also absorbing its essence, its power. The skinwalker becomes, in essence, a part of the animal it has chosen to become. Its instincts, its nature, and its abilities fully integrated into the very fabric of the skinwalker's being. To become a wolf is to embrace the hunger, the need to hunt and dominate. To become a fox is to embrace the art of deception, of stealth and cunning. To become an owl is to embrace the darkness, the unseen forces that move in the night. And to become a coyote is to embrace the chaos, the unpredictable nature of the world. But this transformation is not without its cost. For each time the skinwalker shifts into one of these forms, they lose a little more of their humanity, becoming more and more entwined with the dark forces that they have unleashed. It is said that after a time, the skinwalker begins to lose the ability to return to their human form, trapped in the animal shape they have chosen, forever bound to the darkness they have embraced. The power to shapeshift is both a gift and a curse, a gift that comes with the price of one's soul, and a curse that can never be undone. And so, the skinwalker moves through the world, shifting between the forms of the creatures that embody the darkness, their power growing with each transformation, their humanity slipping further and further away. It is a terrifying existence, a life bound to the forces of night, a life that can never be reclaimed, a life that, once chosen, can never be undone. The powers attributed to the skinwalker, naaldlooshii, extend far beyond the simple act of shape-shifting. For those who fall into the grasp of this dark transformation find themselves imbued with abilities that are not just supernatural, but also deeply sinister. Powers are steeped in both mystery and terror. One of the most feared of these abilities is teleportation, the power to move from one place to another with but a thought, an ability that allows the skinwalker to slip to the fabric of reality itself, moving without warning, without trace. It is said that when the skinwalker teleports, they do so not by the laws of physics as we understand them, but through some unknown, dark force that bends time and space to their will. The very air around them seems to ripple, the earth beneath their feet trembles, and in the blink of an eye, they are gone, leaving behind no trace, no sign that they were ever there. This ability, so terrifying in simplicity, allows the skinwalker to appear and disappear at will, to strike when least expected, and to vanish before anyone can mount any defense. It is an ability that gives the skinwalker an immense advantage, for there is no way to anticipate their movements, no way to track them once they have disappeared. But teleportation is not the only power that the skinwalker possesses. No, far from it. The skinwalker also has the ability of telepathy, a power that allows him to communicate with others without the need for words, without the need for sound. It is said that the skinwalker can enter the minds of those around them, whispering into their thoughts, planting seeds of fear, confusion, and doubt. With telepathy, the skinwalker can manipulate others, bending them to their will, steering their actions without them even knowing it. It is a silent power, a subtle power, one that can be wielded with terrifying precision. The skinwalker can reach into the minds of the living, but it does not stop there. It is said that they also possess the ability to mimic the dead, to take on the voices, the mannerisms, and the very essence of those who have passed on. This is perhaps one of the most chilling abilities of all, for it allows the skinwalker to appear as someone familiar, someone trusted, someone loved, and yet underneath it is a lie, a cruel and malevolent deception. The skinwalker can mimic the dead with such precision that even those who are closest to the departed cannot tell the difference. It is said that the skinwalker will use his mimicry to deceive, to manipulate, and to frighten, taking on the appearance and voice of the deceased to sow discord and terror among the living. This mimicry is not just a deception, however, for it is also tied to the Skinwalker's darker, more sinister power, soul stealing. Yes, the Skinwalker is said to possess the ability to steal the very soul of a person, to reach into their chest and take what makes them human, what gives them life, leaving behind nothing but an empty shell, a hollow body that moves but is no longer truly alive. The act of soul stealing is as old as the Skinwalker itself, a power that allows a creature to consume the essence of another, to feed on the very spirit that gives them strength. When a Skinwalker steals a soul, it is said that the victim is forever lost, their soul consumed and their body left as nothing more than a puppet, a shell of what they once were, driven by the will of the Skinwalker. The power of soul stealing is perhaps the most terrifying of all the abilities possessed by the Skinwalker, for it not only allows them to kill, but also allows them to dominate, to take control of the very essence of another's being, to strip them of their humanity and turn them into something less than human. And so, with these abilities, teleportation, telepathy, mimicry of the dead, and soul stealing, the Skinwalker becomes a creature of unimaginable power, a being that moves through the world as both predator and manipulator, a creature that can shape-shift, disappear, invade minds, and consume souls. It is a being that knows no boundaries, no moral code, no laws of nature. It is a creature that operates outside the realm of human understanding, moving through the world like a shadow, invisible, unstoppable, and utterly malevolent. Those who encounter a Skinwalker know this to be true, for the very presence of the creature fills the air with a sense of dread, a feeling that something unnatural, something truly evil, is lurking just beyond the reach of the human world. The symptoms of the presence of a Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, are as varied and unsettling as the creature itself. Each one a harbinger of the darkness that stalks its prey, each one an unmistakable sign that something unnatural, something deeply malevolent, is near. The first symptom that many report when in the proximity of a Skinwalker is a sudden onset of insomnia, a restless, unshakable sense of wakefulness that prevents the victim from sleeping, no matter how exhausted they may be. This insomnia is not the ordinary, mundane kind brought on by stress or anxiety, but something far more sinister, a supernatural force that seems to reach into the very soul of the victim, keeping them awake, trapped in a state of heightened awareness, their sense of straining in the dead of night, listening, waiting, but unable to sleep. It is said that the Skinwalker's presence disrupts the natural rhythms of life, causing an unnatural stillness in the air, a silence that grows heavier as the night progresses. And it is in this silence that the true horror of the Skinwalker begins to reveal itself. For it is during these sleepless nights that the feeling of being watched becomes almost unbearable. Those who have encountered a Skinwalker speak of the sensation as though eyes are upon them, though no one is there. The sensation of being observed from the shadows, from the corners of the room, from places where light dare not reach. It is a feeling so intense, so deeply ingrained in the mind, that it becomes impossible to ignore. No matter where one turns, the eyes are always there, always watching, always waiting. And it is this constant awareness of an unseen presence that begins to unravel the victim's sanity, driving them further and further into madness, as the fear of what is lurking just out of sight gnaws at the edges of their consciousness. But it is not just the victim's mind that is affected by the presence of the Skinwalker. No, it is the very natural world around them that begins to show signs of disturbance. Animals, those creatures that are so attuned to the rhythms of nature, to the subtle shifts in the air, the changes in the earth, begin to act strangely, as though they too are aware of the unnatural presence that has descended upon the land. Dogs, who are typically loyal and calm, become agitated, barking into the night for no apparent reason, growling at shadows, therefore standing on end, as though they sense something in the air that humans cannot. Cats, normally solitary creatures, begin to hiss and retreat into corners, their eyes wide with fear, watching the darkness as though it is alive, as though it is moving, shifting, and stalking them from just beyond the light. Birds, too, act erratically, fluttering in strange patterns, their calls distorted and frantic, as though the very laws of nature that govern their movements have been broken. It is said that the animals can sense the Skinwalker's presence long before humans can, that their instincts are far more attuned to the supernatural forces that walk among us, and it is through the animal's strange behavior that the first warning signs are often given. Yet perhaps the most unnerving symptom of all, the one that truly sets the skin on edge, is a foul stench that emerges from the darkness. The overwhelming smell of decay, rot, and death that seems to follow the Skinwalker wherever it goes. This stench is not like the ordinary smell of something dead, something decomposing, but something far more potent, something that fills the air with a sense of putrefaction, as though the very earth beneath one's feet is decaying. It is a smell so sickening, so foul, that it is said to choke the breath from one's lungs, to linger in the air long after the creature has passed. The odor is not constant, but appears in brief bursts, appearing suddenly and without warning, so strong that it seems to overwhelm the senses, lingering in the nostrils long after it is gone, clinging to clothing, to hair, to the very air itself. It is the unmistakable sign that the Skinwalker is near, that it is closing in, and that one is not alone, no matter how alone they may feel. And so, with these symptoms, the insomnia, the overwhelming feeling of being watched, the strange behavior of animals, and the foul stench, the Skinwalker makes its presence known, subtly at first, but unmistakably as time goes on. These signs, these symptoms, are not to be taken lightly, for they are the heralds of something far worse, something that cannot be understood by the laws of nature, something that exists beyond the boundaries of human comprehension. The Skinwalker is not merely a creature of flesh and bone. It is a force, a presence that moves through the world unseen, yet felt in every nerve, every sense, until it becomes impossible to deny its existence. And once its presence is known, once the feeling of being watched is sunk deep into the soul, there is no escape, for the Skinwalker is a creature that does not rest, does not sleep, and does not cease its pursuit until it has claimed what it came for. In the folklore of the Navajo, there is an essential, undeniable truth about the Skinwalker, the naaldlooshii, that cannot be overlooked. It is not the mere will of the individual that grants him the power to transform into the creatures of the wild, but rather the use of sacred, forbidden animal hides, hides that have been imbued with dark and potent power, the very source of their transformation. These hides, it is said, are not ordinary skins, but are treated through rituals that are as old as the myths themselves, rituals that have been passed down through generations of those who have dared to walk the darker paths of Navajo spirituality. The act of wearing these hides is not a simple act of disguise or mimicry. No, it is an act of communion with the forces that govern the animal kingdom, an act that binds a wearer to the creature whose hide they don, allowing him to not only adopt the form of the animal, but also to take on its very essence, its instincts, and its primal power. The process of obtaining such hides is not for the faint of heart. One must, in the most repulsive of acts, murder a creature of great significance, be it wolf, coyote, bear, fox, or any other animal of power, and then, through a series of complex and dangerous rituals, strip its hide from its body, preserving it and imbuing it with magic so dark, so malevolent, that it can never be undone. These hides are not simply worn as cloaks or garments, but are transformed into vessels of power, mediums through which the Skinwalker draws their strength, enabling them to slip into the form of the animal they have killed, to walk upon all fours, to hunt, to stalk, to kill with the same savage nature as the very creatures they have become. The act of donning the hide is a deeply spiritual act, for it is not only the creature's body that is appropriated by the Skinwalker, but also its very soul, its spirit. The hide becomes a symbol of the Skinwalker's fall from grace, a symbol of the unholy transformation they have undergone, for where the skin of an animal has become something that transcends humanity, something that is no longer bound by the same laws that govern human beings. And yet, the Skinwalker does not simply wear a hide in the traditional sense. They are, in fact, fused with it, bound to it in a way that transcends the physical. It is said that the spirit of the animal enters into the Skinwalker, melding with their own essence, allowing them to move with the speed, agility, and cunning of the creature whose skin they wear. This power, once granted, is not easily relinquished, for the hide becomes a part of the Skinwalker, an extension of their very being. The transformation is not without consequence, however. For each time the Skinwalker wears a hide, they lose a piece of themselves, a piece of their humanity, until over time, they become more and more like the creatures they have chosen to mimic. There are those who say that after enough transformations, the Skinwalker begins to lose their ability to return to their human form altogether, becoming, over time, nothing more than the animal they have embraced, their mind consumed by the primal instincts of the beast. This is why the act of wearing these hides is so deeply feared. It is a mark of both power and corruption, a symbol of the irreversible change that takes place when one succumbs to the temptation of the dark forces at work in the world. It is said that the hides not only grant power, but also grant a form of immortality. For as long as a skinwalker wears the skin of the creature, they are able to live beyond the normal limits of human life, transcending age and injury, becoming ageless and enduring. However, this immortality comes at a great cost. For the longer a skinwalker wears a hide, the more they are consumed by the animal spirit, losing their connection to the human world, and becoming more and more a creature of darkness and fear. The hides are not just mere tools of transformation. They are the very source of the skinwalker's strength, their power, and their curse. It is through the hides that they can change their shape, that they can move unseen, that they can stalk their prey with the stealth of a predator. The very act of wearing the hide is a testament to the skinwalker's mastery over the natural world, a world in which they no longer belong, a world in which they have rejected the laws that govern human existence in favor of the chaos and savagery of the wild. To wear the hide is to embrace the darkness, to cross over into a realm where the rules no longer apply, where the boundaries between man and animal, between good and evil, are shattered. And it is this very crossing, this very rejection of humanity, that makes the skinwalker both feared and reviled. For it is not simply power they wield, but the price they pay for it that leaves a mark on the soul of those who dare to walk in their footsteps. In the vast and shadowy landscape of Navajo culture, there exists a most curious and deeply ingrained taboo that surrounds the very name of the creature known as a skinwalker, or naaldlooshii. This being, a figure so intertwined with darkness and dread, is never spoken of directly. For to utter its name aloud is to invite a danger most terrible, most immediate, and most incomprehensible to the human mind. The belief is that the mere act of speaking the name of the skinwalker draws its attention, pulling the creature from the deep and unseen spaces where it dwells, bringing it forth from the shadows to move within the realm of the living. This taboo is not taken lightly, for speak its name is said to stir something within the very air, an unseen shift in the fabric of reality, as if the words themselves carry a power that transcends mere language, bending the forces of nature to the will of the skinwalker. For this reason, among the Navajo, the skinwalker is rarely referred to directly. Instead, people speak of it in hushed tones, using euphemisms, indirect phrases, or even silence to avoid invoking its name. To speak it aloud, so the elders say, is to seal one's fate, to draw the attention of the creature, who will then begin its slow and insidious pursuit. The fear of this name is not born merely of superstition, but of a deeply rooted cultural understanding that some things are best left unspoken, for the act of naming them holds power, power that can have dire consequences. This fear, this avoidance, is embedded within the very fabric of Navajo life, passed down from generation to generation as a form of protection, a way to shield the community from the wrath of a being that operates outside the boundaries of nature, outside the rules of morality, outside the very laws that govern life and death. Elders, wise in the ways of the old world, understand that the skinwalker is a creature of such malevolent and unpredictable power that it cannot be tempted by the call of its name without suffering the dire consequences of a curse that is no equal. To speak the name aloud is to invoke a force that transcends the physical realm, a force that can bend the laws of time, space, and spirit to its will. It is said that those who utter the name will find themselves marked, doomed to suffer a fate from which there is no escape. The danger, it seems, lies not in the name itself, but in the connection it forges between the speaker and the skinwalker. Once the name is uttered, the skinwalker is no longer a distant myth, a story told to frighten children, but a living, breathing presence that draws nearer with each passing moment, lurking in the periphery of the speaker's world, its shadow hanging just out of sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. This unspoken rule, this taboo, serves as a protective measure, a defense against the encroaching darkness. It is a way to deny the skinwalker entry into the lives of those who follow the old ways, a way to preserve the delicate balance that exists between the living and the dead, between the natural world and the world of spirits. To name it is to invite chaos, to invite suffering, and to allow that which should remain hidden to enter the world of the living. The cultural aversion to speaking the name is not merely a matter of fear, but a deeply held belief in the power of words themselves. In Navajo tradition, words are not just sounds that convey meaning. They are living, breathing entities that hold sway over the world. A name is not a mere label, but a symbol of power, and to speak the name of the Skinwalker is to get a foothold in the realm of the living, a permission to act, to harm, to enter where it is not welcome. In this way, the act of naming is seen as an act of invitation, one that cannot be undone once it is performed. Even the mere mention of the Skinwalker, even in passing, can cause ripples in the very fabric of reality, drawing the creature's attention and bringing it closer to those who dare speak of it. This taboo, while seemingly irrational to the uninitiated, is one of the most profound and deeply ingrained elements of Navajo culture, a reminder that some things are better left unsaid, that the power of a name is not to be underestimated, and that the forces that govern the natural and spiritual realms are not to be trifled with. To speak the name of the Skinwalker is to invite disaster, to open a door that should never be opened. And it is for this reason that the name is avoided, that the creature is spoken of only in whispers, if at all, and that even the bravest of individuals will never speak aloud. For to do so would be to seal their own fate, to invite the terror that lurks just beyond the veil. In this way, the Skinwalker remains a mystery, a shadow that haunts the edges of human understanding. Its name unspeakable, its presence ever-threatening, waiting for the moment when its name is uttered and its curse is unleashed. The infamous case of Skinwalker Ranch, located in the desolate, Eerie stretches of Utah, is one of the most baffling, unnerving, and utterly mysterious phenomena ever to plague a family in their land, a place that, to this day, evokes fear, confusion, and fascination in equal measure. In the mid-1990s, the Sherman family, who had recently purchased the land, found themselves ensnared in a nightmare that defied all explanation and, indeed, seemed to transcend the natural laws of the world as we understand them. The land, once thought to be simple, remote, and rural, soon became the site of inexplicable and terrifying events that not only disrupted the lives of the Shermans, but also caught the attention of scientists, researchers, and paranormal investigators from across the globe. The first signs of something horribly amiss began with the mutilation of cattle, an occurrence that many ranchers have faced over the centuries, but which was different, far more peculiar in its nature. The cattle were discovered, as you might expect, butchered and left in odd positions, cut open with precision, yet with no signs of struggle or human presence. What made these mutilations so disturbing, however, was the sheer strangeness of the wounds. The cuts were surgical in their neatness, so clean that they appeared as though they had been made by some sort of advanced, otherworldly tool, one that was far beyond the capacity of any human blade. But perhaps the most unsettling part of these discoveries was the lack of blood. These animals were left to die, yes, but there was no trace of their life's essence to be found in the area. Their blood had been drained, as though some unnatural force had siphoned it away, leaving behind only the empty shell of the creature. It was as if the cattle had been drained not by some earthly predator, but by something far more malevolent, something that defied earthly logic. And these incidents of cattle mutilation were only the beginning. Strange occurrences multiplied in rapid succession on the Sherman Ranch, each more bizarre and unnerving than the last. Doors that were securely locked in the evening would mysteriously swing open by morning, as if some unseen force had entered the house, wandered about, and then exited again, leaving no trace behind but the disquieting presence of something that should not be. The Shermans found themselves, understandably, on edge, unable to explain these inexplicable occurrences. Then came the symbols, strange, cryptic markings that appeared etched into the earth, into the barn, and on the fence posts, symbols that resembled nothing known to human language or to any known system of communication. These marks were not random, not haphazard scribbles, but purposeful, intricate designs, as if some intelligence had left a message behind, a message meant to be deciphered or understood by someone or something that possessed a knowledge far beyond human comprehension. And it was this unsettling pattern, this sense that something intelligent, something not of this world, was attempting to make contact, that escalated the terror the Sherman family faced. They were not merely dealing with the random misfortunes of ranch life, but with something deliberate, something purposeful, something that had decided to make their home its territory. Yet perhaps the most chilling and inexplicable event came when eyewitnesses, including the Shermans themselves, reported sightings of a large, dark figure that moved on all fours and in human speed, a creature whose size and movement defied explanation. The descriptions given were consistent and terrifying. A large, shadowy entity, moving with an eerie, almost supernatural grace, darting across the land at a pace so fast that it seemed to glide, almost as if it was suspended between the earth and the air, not bound by the laws of physics as we understand them. This creature was not a simple wolf, nor a coyote, nor any known animal of the land. No, it was something far more monstrous, far more terrifying. Its dark, hulking form a blur in the night, an image so deeply unsettling that it caused the witnesses to freeze in terror, unsure what they had just seen, unable to fully process the reality of the creature before them. Some have even speculated that the creature was not a physical being at all, but a manifestation of some otherworldly force, an apparition or entity that existed outside the physical realm, yet still able to affect the physical world in ways that humans could not fathom. The speed at which it moved, the unnatural fluidity of its movements, suggested something that was not of this earth, not bound by the same limitations as those creatures of flesh and blood. It moved in a way that was distinctly unnatural, like a being not accustomed to being bound by the rules of gravity, or perhaps a being that had no need for constraints of earthly physics. Witnesses to these events spoke of an overwhelming sense of dread, a feeling that nothing was as it should be, that the very fabric of the world had been torn, and through that tear, something terrible had slipped through. The sightings of this dark, strange figure became more frequent, and the Shermans, unable to escape the mounting terror, eventually abandoned their home, leaving behind their land and their livelihood. But the events at Skinwalker Ranch did not cease with the departure of the family. They continued to haunt the land, attracting the attention of researchers, journalists, and paranormal investigators who were eager to unravel the mystery of what had transpired there. The ranch, now infamous, has been the subject of numerous investigations, each one yielding more questions and answers. But to this day, no one has been able to fully explain the phenomenon of Skinwalker Ranch, nor to account for the strange occurrences that plagued the land. Was it the work of a skinwalker, a being of such dark power and malevolent intelligence that it could control the very forces of nature? Or was there something else at work? Some force beyond human comprehension? Some presence that defies all explanation? Whatever the truth may be, Skinwalker Ranch remains one of the most chilling and inexplicable mysteries in the world of paranormal investigation, a place where the lines between the natural and supernatural blur, and where the very rules of reality seem to unravel, leaving only fear and uncertainty in the annals of American history. There are few mysteries as perplexing and unsettling as the events that unfolded at Skinwalker Ranch, a remote piece of land in Utah that, for decades, has been the subject of both intense public fascination and scientific scrutiny. The story, as many of you may know, began in the 1990s when the Sherman family, who had recently purchased a property, found themselves at the mercy of an increasingly disturbing series of events that defied all logic and explanation, as their cattle were mysteriously mutilated, as strange symbols appeared on their land, and as they experienced sightings of shadowy figures and inexplicable phenomena. The Shermans were forced into a state of terror, their lives turned upside down by forces they could not comprehend. But what began as a local and personal nightmare soon captured the attention of the broader scientific community, particularly the U.S. government, which was, at the time, investigating paranormal phenomena with a great deal of interest. In the wake of the Shermans' departure from the ranch, the U.S. government, intrigued and deeply concerned by the reports of inexplicable occurrences, took action through its military and intelligence agencies. The government began conducting investigations into the strange happenings at Skinwalker Ranch, eager to understand whether the events were the result of some unknown natural phenomenon, a covert government experiment gone awry, or something even more sinister. However, despite the high level of attention and resources dedicated to the investigation, the government was ultimately unable to provide any conclusive explanations for the phenomena that had taken place on the ranch. The investigations, while thorough, were marked by a curious lack of answers, with numerous theories proposed, but none proven. The U.S. government, after years of investigation, found itself standing at a crossroads, uncertain whether the events were the result of human activity, natural forces, or something far more inexplicable and potentially terrifying. The mystery of Skinwalker Ranch was not only a topic of interest for government agencies, but also for private scientific organizations. The National Institute for Discovery Science, or NIDS, a privately funded organization dedicated to the investigation of anomalous phenomena, was particularly intrigued by the events at Skinwalker Ranch. Established in the mid-1990s by billionaire businessman Robert Bigelow, NIDS sought to apply rigorous scientific methods to the study of paranormal events, including those reported at Skinwalker Ranch. Bigelow, who had long been fascinated by the concept of extraterrestrial life and unexplained phenomena, poured significant resources into studying the ranch, bringing in a team of scientists, engineers, and specialists from various fields to investigate the strange occurrences that had plagued the land. Over the course of several years, NIDS conducted extensive research on Skinwalker Ranch, setting up cameras, equipment, and monitoring systems in an effort to capture evidence of the strange phenomena. Their investigations focus on the mysterious cattle mutilations, the sightings of shadowy figures, the strange symbols, and the eerie, inexplicable sounds and lights that have been reported by the Shermans and other witnesses. They gathered evidence, recorded data, and conducted interviews, all in the hopes of shedding light on the source of the disturbances. Despite their extensive efforts, however, the results of NIDS' investigations were far from conclusive. While some strange occurrences were documented, no definitive evidence was ever produced that could explain the events at Skinwalker Ranch in a scientific context. The team found no clear indication of hoaxes or deliberate human interference, and yet they could not provide any verifiable evidence of the paranormal or extraterrestrial explanations that have been suggested. The scientific instruments they employed, cameras, infrared sensors, motion detectors, and electromagnetic field (EMF) monitors, detected strange anomalies on occasion, but these anomalies were often fleeting, inconsistent, and impossible to replicate. In some cases, the equipment would pick up strange readings, only to have the phenomena disappear before the investigators could capture concrete evidence. At times, researchers observed strange lights in the sky, but no one was able to explain the source of these lights, whether they were the result of natural atmospheric conditions, military activity, or something more otherworldly. Similarly, the sightings of shadowy figures moving at unnatural speeds or on all fours remained unsubstantiated by hard evidence, leaving investigators to wonder whether they were witnessing a manifestation of something paranormal or simply suffering from collective misinterpretations of what was seen in the darkness. One of the key elements that made the Skinwalker Ranch case so perplexing was its elusiveness. Time and time again, the scientific community and investigators found themselves chasing shadows, unable to pinpoint a single cause of bizarre events that transpired. The phenomenon, at least in scientific terms, defied categorization, and no definitive conclusions could be drawn. While some researchers remained steadfast in their belief that there was an undiscovered, natural explanation for the disturbances, be it a rare atmospheric phenomenon, an undiscovered species of predator, or a series of highly coincidental events. Others, drawn to more fantastic possibilities, leaned toward the idea that the ranch was the site of some supernatural occurrence, a place where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds had been torn asunder. The inability to reach a definitive conclusion left both the scientific community and the public in a state of uneasy uncertainty, with many simply accepting that the Skinwalker Ranch mystery was one that could not be explained by conventional means. Ultimately, despite the years of investigation and the vast resources poured into it, the events at Skinwalker Ranch remain one of the most baffling and inexplicable paranormal mysteries ever recorded. The government and NIDS were unable to produce conclusive evidence to support any single theory, leaving the ranch itself as a place of unrelenting mystery. In the end, the investigations, while thorough, yielded no clear answers, and the strange occurrences that took place on the ranch continue to haunt the imaginations of those who dare to consider the possibilities. The case of Skinwalker Ranch serves as a chilling reminder that, despite our most advanced scientific tools and our best efforts to uncover the unknown, some mysteries remain stubbornly beyond our reach, shrouded in darkness, forever evading explanation. In the long and often troubling history of the mysterious and unsettling events surrounding Skinwalker Ranch, there exists an array of reports, each one adding another layer of strange and eerie detail to a tale that, over time, has become as much folklore as it is a documented enigma. These reports, though varied in their nature, share common threads of dread, inexplicability, and a sense of profound disturbance, and they serve as a stark reminder that the land itself may be not just a place of earthly soil, but one marked by forces far beyond human comprehension. One of the more common reports from those who have ventured near the ranch, or have dared to spend time in the surrounding desert areas, is that of cars inexplicably breaking down, often in the most isolated and barren parts of the land, at the most inopportune times. Witnesses have spoken of vehicles, their engines purring smoothly one moment, only to suddenly stall, regardless of the state of their mechanical health, as though some unseen force had cut off their power. This happens not in the typical mechanical sense, where overheating or malfunction might explain a breakdown, but rather in a more unexplainable manner, where the car is simply rendered useless, leaving the driver stranded, powerless in the vast desert. The breakdowns, it seems, are not random. They occur with such frequency in the areas surrounding the ranch that many come to believe that they are not just accidents, but an intentional phenomenon, perhaps a manifestation of the strange and hostile forces that occupy the land. And yet, despite the many attempts to find an earthly explanation, these breakdowns are often followed by something even more disconcerting, something more unnerving and inexplicable. The reports tell the eerie, unsettling phenomenon of knocks on doors at precisely 3 a.m., a time when the world should be deep in sleep. And yet, there are those who claim to have heard the sound of their door being knocked upon at that very hour, only to find no one there. These knocks, coming from no apparent source, are not the simple knocks of passerby or a late-night visitor, but the ominous, hollow rapping, which seems to echo throughout the house, unsettling the nerves of anyone within earshot. What makes these knocks so strange, and what makes them different from the knocks of ordinary life, is the fact that they come with such an unnatural timing. Always at 3 a.m. they arrive, a time when the world is at its darkest, when silence reigns, and the land itself seems to hold its breath. Some have speculated that these knocks are the result of some earthly force, perhaps a trick of the wind or an animal. But those who have heard them know that there is something distinctly unnatural about them, something that seems to come from a place that cannot be explained by mere physical causes. The unease brought about by these knocks is further compounded by the strange behavior of animals in the area. In particular, many have noted the unsettling way in which certain animals, particularly dogs, have begun to behave around the ranch. These animals, typically the most loyal and perceptive of creatures, often stare into empty space, their eyes fixed on something unseen, something that cannot be perceived by human eyes. These silent stares are not the result of any obvious stimuli. The animals are not responding to a sound or a scent, but are simply gazing into the distance, their attention focused on something beyond our understanding. This behavior, in and of itself, will be troubling enough, but what makes it all the more disturbing is the sense that the animals are aware of something we cannot see, something that lies just beyond the veil of our perception, waiting and watching, a presence that does not belong. It is as if the animals, in their innocent and unknowing way, are attuned to something that humans are not, something that makes them uncomfortable, something that frightens them. They seem to be aware of forces that lie beyond the natural world, forces that are perhaps tied to the very land itself, forces that have existed long before humanity ever set foot upon this earth. It is in the wake of these unsettling reports, the breakdowns, the knocks, the strange behavior of animals, that many have sought an explanation. The Navajo, for whom the land surrounding Skinwalker Ranch is sacred, have a simple explanation for the bizarre happenings that seem to plague the place. They do not seek to complicate the matter with theories about alien visitation, government experimentation, or even curses. No, the Navajo believe, as they have for generations, that the land belongs to the Changed Ones, the naaldlooshii, the Skinwalkers, and that these creatures are no longer human. The Skinwalkers, according to Navajo belief, are those who have transgressed the natural order, those who have violated the sacred laws of the universe in pursuit of dark power. They are people who, through unspeakable acts, have broken the bonds of humanity and have become something else, something not quite human, something dark and malevolent. The Navajo, in their ancient wisdom, understand that this land is not merely a plot of earth, but a place where the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds is thin, a place where the changed ones dwell, where the skinwalkers hold sway, and where the very fabric of reality seems to bend and warp, allowing for strange and unnatural events to occur. This belief, while deeply rooted in Navajo culture, is one that provides little comfort to outsiders. To them, the idea that the land belongs to the Changed Ones is a chilling reminder that some things cannot be explained by science, by reason, or by understanding. It is a reminder that there are forces at work in this world that defy all comprehension, forces that operate outside of the laws of nature, forces that exist in the shadows, lurking just beyond our sight, waiting for the right moment to strike. And it is this fear, this deep-seated dread of the Changed Ones, that continues to haunt the land around Skinwalker Ranch. For the Skinwalkers, it is said, never truly leave. They remain hidden in the shadows, waiting, watching, and when the time is right, they will reveal themselves once again. The phenomenon of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, which has long been a staple of Navajo folklore, carries with it not only an unsettling physical presence, but also a deep psychological weight, one that taps into the most primal and universal human fears. From a psychological perspective, Skinwalkers can be seen as symbols of collective fear, betrayal, and the collapse of moral order, for they represent something far more profound than a mere shape-shifting creature lurking in the shadows. No, the Skinwalker, in its most elemental form, embodies a violation of sacred bonds, the breaking of trust so fundamental to human experience that its repercussions are felt not only in the immediate aftermath, but throughout the very fabric of society. The act that transforms a human being into a Skinwalker, murdering a close family member, serves as a grotesque metaphor for betrayal of the highest order, an offense that shatters the core principles of familial loyalty and human morality. The Navajo, in their profound understanding of the human condition, knew that to commit such a heinous act was to sever the very ties that bound individuals to their community, to the moral codes that governed their lives. The Skinwalker, therefore, becomes a psychological representation of the fear that lies at the heart of betrayal, the loss of trust, the breakdown of the most sacred relationships, and the descent into darkness that follows. It is not simply the shape-shifting ability of a Skinwalker that causes fear, though that, too, is unsettling in its own right. Rather, it is a realization that this transformation is born out of an insidious act of moral corruption. An individual, once bound by the same social and ethical constraints as everyone else, choosing to tear asunder the very fabric of their humanity in pursuit of power, a power that comes at the cost of their soul. The Skinwalker, in this sense, represents the fear of the disintegration of moral order. In a world where the bonds between individuals are crucial for survival and harmony, the Skinwalker emerges as a living, breathing reminder that even those who are closest to us, family members, those who should be trusted above all, are capable of the darkest betrayal. This fear, while rooted in the specific context of Navajo society, is universal, for the anxiety over the breakdown of familial trust and the loss of moral integrity transcends cultural boundaries. The notion that one can turn their back on humanity itself, that they can willingly choose to abandon the principles that have governed human society for centuries, strikes at the very core of what it means to be human. The transformation into a Skinwalker, with its dark and twisted power, symbolizes this moral collapse, this rupture in the natural order that shatters not just the individual but the community itself. The Skinwalker, by breaking the most sacred moral code, becomes the embodiment of chaos, a force that operates outside the rules of nature and civilization. It represents the fear that, should the moral fabric of society unravel, the world itself will descend into madness, where nothing and no one can be trusted, and where the forces of darkness can freely roam, unchecked and uncontested. It is for this reason that the Skinwalker, in its mythical form, serves as a powerful psychological tool, a symbol designed to evoke deep-seated fears of what may happen when the moral order is disturbed. The Skinwalker is not just a predator or a monster lurking in the darkness. It is a manifestation of the fear that the very foundation of society can be undermined from within, from those we trust most. This is why the Skinwalker holds such a chilling power over the collective consciousness of the Navajo people, and indeed, why its symbolism transcends culture, resonating with the fear of betrayal, chaos, and the ultimate collapse of the moral order. It is a figure that serves as both a warning and a cautionary tale, reminding us that the line between good and evil, between humanity and monstrosity, is far thinner than we might like to believe. The psychological impact of Skinwalker, then, lies not only in the fear of the unknown, but in the deep-rooted terror that arises when the most sacred bonds of trust and morality are broken, and when the very essence of what makes us human is forsaken in pursuit of power and darkness. The Skinwalker is, in this sense, not just a creature of folklore, but a timeless representation of the fragility of the moral order and the terrifying possibility of its disintegration. In the broader context of Navajo society, the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, serves not only as a figure of terror and the embodiment of dark forces, but also as a potent mechanism of social control, an instrument of cultural deterrence designed to enforce the sacred laws that govern human behavior. The very nature of the Skinwalker, with its transformation to the most grievous violation of societal and spiritual trust, serves as a stark reminder to the community of the consequences of abandoning the moral framework that holds society together. The Skinwalker, you see, is not just a creature born of malevolent magic or an embodiment of human fear, but cautionary tale woven deeply into the fabric of Navajo tradition, one that was used to reinforce the importance of maintaining the sacred bonds that connect people to their land, their families, and their spiritual beliefs. The act of becoming a Skinwalker is one that requires a grave betrayal. Specifically, the act of murdering a close family member in order to gain the power to transform into an animal. This in itself is not merely a violation of one's familial duty, but an affront to the very laws of the natural and spiritual worlds. Such an act, in the eyes of the Navajo, is seen not just as a sin, but as a transgression that rends the fabric of humanity itself, severing the individual from the community and from the moral order that binds a society together. By incorporating the story of the Skinwalker into their cultural beliefs, the Navajo sought to create a powerful deterrent against such violations of sacred laws. It is said that the mere thought of becoming a Skinwalker, of invoking the dark forces necessary to commit such an act, would cause a person to reflect on the dire consequences that would inevitably follow. In the same way that modern societies use laws and punishments to discourage crime, the Navajo used the Skinwalker myth to discourage actions that would lead to the collapse of moral and social order. The figure of the Skinwalker, with its terrifying powers and its loss of humanity, acts as a stark warning to those who might consider straying from the laws of nature and society. To engage in such dark acts, to forsake the laws of family, society, and spirit, is to willingly embrace a fate worse than death, a fate in which the soul is corrupted, the individual is isolated from the community, and the very essence of what it means to be human is forever lost. The Skinwalker myth, then, serves as a form of spiritual and cultural policing, reminding the people of the grave consequences that await those who fall outside the boundaries of acceptable behavior. It is a story that was likely told to children and adults alike, a story designed to instill fear and obedience, but also to cultivate a deep respect for the laws that govern their lives. This social control mechanism is not unique to the Navajo. Indeed, many cultures throughout history have used folklore and myth as a means of socializing their people, of ensuring that the rules and mores of society are adhered to, often through the use of fear. The Skinwalker, as a creature that embodies the breakdown of moral order, is a direct response to this need for control. By making the transformation into a Skinwalker so horrific, so utterly unnatural, the Navajo reinforced the idea that the worst punishment, greater than any physical harm, was to become something no longer human, to give into the base, primal instincts that lie within us all. And thus, the Skinwalker serves not just as a creature of fear, but as an integral part of the Navajo moral framework, a cultural tool used to preserve order and harmony within the community. Through this myth, the Navajo remind themselves of the sacred nature of their laws, of the importance of family, loyalty, and respect for the natural world. The Skinwalker, therefore, functions as both a moral lesson and a warning, an eternal reminder that the forces of darkness are always lurking, ready to prey upon those who forget the sacred balance that sustains life and society. It is a cultural deterrent, one that continues to resonate within the collective consciousness of the Navajo people to this very day, a reminder that the price of betraying the natural order is the loss of one's soul and the irreversible descent into a life of darkness and terror. In the lore of the Navajo people, those who seek to attain unnatural power, to break the sacred laws of the universe and to rise above the natural order in pursuit of forbidden knowledge, become what is known as the Twisted Ones, a term that serves as both a description of their corrupted nature and a dire warning to all who would dare tread upon such dangerous paths. The Twisted Ones are not merely individuals who have sought power, but those who have abandoned their humanity in the pursuit of something far darker, far more malevolent. These individuals are, in the eyes of the Navajo, no longer bound by the laws that govern human life, the laws that connect people to their community, their family, and the natural world. They are outcasts, ostracized by their own people, because they have chosen to embrace powers that sever their ties to the moral and spiritual codes that define human existence. In many ways, the Twisted Ones are seen as the antithesis of the Navajo way of life, for their actions are driven by selfish ambition, a hunger for control, and a complete disregard for the harmony that is essential to maintaining the balance between the physical and spiritual realms. These individuals seek to manipulate the forces of nature, to harness powers that should never be touched by human hands. And in doing so, they not only risk their own souls, but endanger the entire community. The Twisted Ones are often associated with dark, forbidden practices such as witchcraft, necromancy, and of course, the practice of shape-shifting into animals, a power that is said to be gained only through the commission of unspeakable acts. Most notably, the murder of a close family member. To kill one's own kin is to sever the very fabric of society, to reject the sacred bonds that hold the community together. And it is through this act of betrayal, this moral rupture, that the Twisted Ones are born, their souls corrupted beyond redemption, their humanity forever lost. These individuals are not merely outcasts in the social sense. They are outcasts in the spiritual realm, for they have chosen to walk a path that leads away from the light and into the shadows, a path that disconnects them from the natural world and the spirits that protect it. Their transformation into twisted beings is not just physical but spiritual, as they abandon the very essence of what it means to be human. They become creatures of darkness, driven by their desire for power, their insatiable hunger to control the forces that govern life itself. The Twisted Ones are feared, not just because of their abilities, but because of the deep corruption they embody, a corruption that spreads like a disease, infecting everything they touch. The Navajo believe that these individuals, once they have crossed the line and embrace the darkness, are beyond redemption, for they have forsaken the sacred laws that govern life and death. The Twisted Ones are not only outcasts in the sense that they are rejected by society, they are also outcasts in the eyes of the spirits, who, according to Navajo belief, watch over the living and the dead. The spirits, who are said to guide and protect the Navajo people, will not tolerate those who seek to defile the natural order, and so the Twisted Ones are left to wander in isolation, hunted not only by their own people, but by the very forces they sought to control. The very nature of their existence is one of suffering, for they are caught between two worlds, the human world, from which they have been severed, and the spirit world, which they can never fully enter because of their corruption. These individuals live a life of constant torment, never able to return to the warmth of their community, never able to find peace, for they are forever marked by their betrayal. And so, the Twisted Ones are both feared and pitted, for their fate is a tragic one, a fate that serves as a warning to all who consider seeking power at any cost. The legend of the Twisted Ones is not just a tale of horror. It is also a cautionary story, one that reminds the Navajo people the importance of maintaining the balance between the physical and spiritual realms, of respecting the sacred laws that govern life, and of never allowing ambition or the thirst for power to overshadow the bonds that hold the community together. For in the end, it is the Twisted Ones who suffer the most, for they have not only forsaken their own humanity, but they have condemned themselves to a life of eternal exile, forever separated from the very forces of nature and spirit that once gave them life. The lesson, then, is clear. To seek unnatural powers, to become lost, to become an outcast in both the human world and the spiritual one, and to risk everything, one's soul, one's community, and even one's very existence, in a pursuit of darkness. These stories, these legends of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, are not mere superstition, not idle tales spun for the amusement of children or the passing of long evenings by the fire. No, these stories serve a far greater purpose, one that stretches back to the centuries, woven deeply into the very fabric of Navajo culture, a vital component of their moral framework. These tales are moral maps, passed down from one generation to the next, designed not only to entertain, but to teach, to guide, and to warn. Each telling of the Skinwalker story, each recounting of the terrible transformation and the fate of those who embrace darkness, carries with a lesson, a piece of wisdom meant to protect and preserve the values that bind the community together. For the Navajo, as for many cultures, stories are not merely entertainment. They are the vehicles by which knowledge is transmitted, by which moral teachings are instilled, and by which the boundaries of acceptable behavior are defined. The Skinwalker, with its dark powers and terrifying presence, embodies the consequences of forsaking the sacred laws that govern life and the natural world. It serves as a reminder that there are forces, both physical and spiritual, that must be respected, that the balance between the human world and the realm of the spirits is delicate, and that any attempt to upset that balance, to reach beyond the boundaries of human understanding, comes at a steep and irreversible cost. To seek power through dark means, to turn away from the light of the natural world and embrace the forces of corruption is to risk losing not only one's soul, but one's humanity itself. The Skinwalker story, therefore, is a moral map, guiding the individual away from the dangerous allure of forbidden knowledge and toward the preservation of harmony, community, and spiritual balance. It is a tale that teaches the value of loyalty, respect, and restraint, virtues that are essential to maintaining the social and moral fabric of the Navajo people. The Skinwalker represents the ultimate betrayal, the violation of the most sacred bond a person can have, that of family, and serves as a warning to all who might entertain the idea of breaking these bonds. The stories of the Skinwalker, passed down through generations, are not just warnings of physical danger, of being hunted or tormented by a malevolent force, but also of the deeper spiritual consequences of violating the moral laws that govern human existence. These stories are meant to instill a sense of responsibility, to remind the listener of the consequences that await those who stray from the path of righteousness, and to encourage vigilance in the face of temptation. In this way, the stories of Skinwalker function as a form of social control, a mechanism by which the Navajo people reinforce their collective values and ensure the survival of their way of life. The Skinwalker is a symbol of the dangers that lurk on the fringes of society, the temptation of power, and the corrupting influence of greed and betrayal. But more than that, the Skinwalker is a mirror, a reflection of the darkest potential that lies within us all, a reminder that even those who are closest to us, those we trust the most, can betray us and turn toward the forces of darkness. The tale of the Skinwalker is thus a moral map, guiding the listener through the complexities of human nature, warning of the dangers that lie ahead, and encouraging the cultivation of virtues that promote harmony and balance. It is a map that helps one navigate the moral landscape of the world, one that teaches how to avoid the pitfalls of corruption, and one that offers a path to redemption by embracing the natural world and the spiritual forces that govern it. In this way, the Skinwalker story is a profound and essential part of Navajo cultural heritage, not merely a story to be retold for its shock value or its fear-inducing qualities, but a fundamental teaching tool, a guide for living in accordance with the sacred laws of the universe. To understand the Skinwalker is to understand the fragility of the moral order and the consequences of forsaking that order, and these teachings are passed down to the generations to ensure that the values of respect, harmony, and responsibility remain at the heart of Navajo life. Thus, the stories of the Skinwalker are far from mere superstition. They are, in fact, the moral bedrock upon which Navajo society is built, and they serve as a testament to the power of storytelling as a tool for cultural preservation and moral instruction. The Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, stands as a profound embodiment of organized fear, a creature whose very existence is a manifestation of the deepest anxieties that reside within the human heart. It is not merely a figure born from superstition or casual storytelling. No, the Skinwalker is something far more sinister, something that serves as both a warning and a punishment, a sin given shape and form, a warning in flesh that is as terrifying as it is necessary. In the Navajo worldview, the Skinwalker is not simply an evil spirit or an unholy beast, but a creature that represents the consequences of violating the sacred laws that bind humanity to the natural and spiritual realms. This creature is the very embodiment of transgression, a living reflection of all that can go wrong when one steps too far from the moral order, when one dares forsake the bond of kinship, respect, and harmony. To become a Skinwalker is to break the most sacred rule of Navajo society, the act of murdering a close family member, a brother, a sister, a parent. This act, a betrayal of the highest order, tears the very fabric of the individual's humanity, casting them into a realm where they are no longer human, no longer bound by the laws of nature or society, but instead transformed into something dark, something wholly other, something that operates outside of the natural order. In this way, the Skinwalker is not just a creature. It is a living representation of sin itself, a sin that has been given form, given shape, and made real. It is as though the very act of wrongdoing, the very transgression of the sacred laws, has come to life, becoming a tangible, frightening presence that stalks a land, a constant reminder of the consequences of moral corruption. But the Skinwalker does not merely serve as a figure of fear. It also serves as a warning for those who might consider the temptation of darkness, for those who might be lured by the promises of power and immortality that come at the cost of one's soul. The creature is a living testament to the fact that there is no escape from the consequences of sin, No way to avoid the unraveling that comes when one chooses to forsake the laws that bind us to our community, to our humanity, and to the earth itself. The Skinwalker is, in essence, a being that is both a result and a reminder of the fragility of moral order. It is a force that stands as a warning to all who would dare to defy the rules, to step outside the bounds of acceptable behavior. For it shows that once the natural order is broken, the very world around you begins to twist and unravel. To encounter a Skinwalker, therefore, is not merely to encounter a physical threat. It is to encounter a moral judgment, a consequence made manifest. The creature's existence is proof that sin, when allowed to grow unchecked, can take on a life of its own, can become something more than just a violation. It can become a force that seeks to consume, to destroy, to tear apart everything in its path. And it is this terrifying notion that gives the Skinwalker its power, not just as a creature, but as a symbol, as an embodiment of fear itself. It stands as a living warning to all who hear its story that there is no escape from the repercussions of one's actions, no safe place to hide from the consequences of breaking the moral laws that hold society together. The Skinwalker, in its monstrous form, is a reminder that when one transgresses, when one betrays the sacred bonds of trust and love, the punishment is not simply a matter of physical harm, but a deep spiritual disintegration that turns a very soul into something twisted and unrecognizable. It is this connection between sin, punishment, and fear that makes the Skinwalker such a powerful figure in Navajo folklore. For it is not just a being to be feared, but a moral lesson to be learned, a cautionary tale meant to prevent others from falling into the same trap of darkness. In this way, the Skinwalker is far more than just a creature of terror. It is a force of justice, a living embodiment of the consequences that follow when one dares to tamper with a natural and spiritual order, a tangible reminder that sin is not just an abstract concept, but a force that can take shape, can become flesh, and can walk among us, waiting for those who would dare to break the sacred laws. The figure of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, once rooted deeply in the spiritual traditions and folklore of the Navajo people, has, in recent years, made a peculiar and troubling transformation, transcending its traditional cultural boundaries to become a pervasive figure in the world of pop culture, particularly through the ever-expanding realms of creepypasta, TikTok, Reddit, and various television shows such as Supernatural and Skinwalker Ranch. What was once a deeply sacred and terrifying entity has been repurposed, reshaped, and reimagined by a new generation eager to explore the boundaries of horror, mythology, and the supernatural. The Skinwalker, now a staple in the lexicon of modern fright, is no longer merely a symbol of cultural fear or spiritual transgression, but has become an entertainment commodity, subject to the whims of viral content creators and television producers alike. On platforms like Reddit and TikTok, the Skinwalker has been woven into the fabric of online horror stories, particularly in the realm of creepypasta. Those eerie, anonymous tales shared across the internet, designed to unsettle and terrify. These stories often draw from the traditional mythology of the Skinwalker, but tend to take creative liberties, amplifying the creature's horror elements while often stripping away the cultural significance and depth that the Navajo once imbued into the myth. On these platforms, the Skinwalker has evolved into something of a monster, a shape-shifting entity capable of terrifying feats, like mimicking human voices or appearing in places where it should not belong, all while retaining the sinister qualities that make it so fearsome. TikTok, too, has seen an influx of short, spine-chilling videos and discussions centered around the Skinwalker, where users share personal encounters or sightings of this malevolent being, often mixing fact with fiction in a way that blurs the line between reality and entertainment. These quick, digestible clips, accompanied by ominous music and dramatic captions, perpetuate the fear and mystery surrounding the Skinwalker, building a digital mythology where folklore is distorted and remade for a new generation of horror enthusiasts. The Skinwalker has also made his way into more mainstream media, notably in television series such as Supernatural, where it's portrayed as a dangerous, shape-shifting predator, a being of darkness that preys upon the unsuspecting, embodying the very essence of fear. Similarly, Skinwalker Ranch, a show based on the infamous and mysterious events reported on a ranch in Utah, has further propagated the Skinwalker myth, intertwining it with the paranormal investigations that have captivated audiences for decades. These portrayals, while intriguing and entertaining, often reduce the Skinwalker to little more than a creature of horror, stripping away the cultural, moral, and spiritual significance that once defined it. The transformation of the Skinwalker from a sacred and deeply feared symbol into a tool of modern horror entertainment is a reflection of how folklore can be repurposed and commercialized, removed from its cultural roots, and reshaped for mass consumption. While the stories of the Skinwalker still evoke fear, the modern iterations often lack the depth and respect for the cultural context from which they sprang, leaving behind only the fear of the unknown, that same terror that has persisted for generations, but now dislocated, detached, and commodified. In the modern era, we are witnessing a phenomenon of legend revival, where ancient folklore, once confined to the sacred oral traditions of indigenous cultures, is being resurrected and reinterpreted through the lenses of digital media. The Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, is one such legend that has made this transition, finding itself transformed into a creature horror for contemporary audiences. With the rise of the internet, platforms such as TikTok, Reddit, and YouTube, along with popular media like Hollywood films and television shows, have taken these age-old tales and reshaped them into entertainment, often stripping away the deeper cultural, spiritual, and moral meanings that once defined them. In doing so, the Skinwalker has become not just a figure of fear, but a commodity, a product to be consumed and consumed again. What was once a terrifying embodiment of betrayal and moral transgression, a being that served as a cultural lesson meant to preserve the balance between the physical and spiritual realms, has now become little more than a character in a chilling story, reduced to the role of a monster that lurks in the shadows. While the revival of these legends in the digital age might be seen by some as a means of keeping the stories alive, it also raises significant concerns regarding cultural appropriation and the loss of sacred meaning. Hollywood, in particular, has long had a history of appropriating indigenous lore, stripping it of its context, and repurposing it for the entertainment industry. In the case of the Skinwalker, this often involves a simplification of the creature's significance, transforming it from a complex spiritual symbol into a mere object of fear, without acknowledging its cultural and moral underpinnings. The traditional Navajo understanding of the Skinwalker as a deeply feared and revered figure, one tied to the violation of sacred laws and the unraveling of the natural order, is often reduced to nothing more than a terrifying entity, its true meaning lost to the demands of popular culture. The digital media sphere, too, plays a significant role in this shift. The proliferation of creepypasta stories, viral TikToks, and viral Reddit threads has turned the Skinwalker into a kind of folkloric product, one that can be easily digested in short, sensationalized bursts. These retellings, often devoid of any historical or cultural context, spread like wildfire across the internet, and in doing so, further commodify and diminish the Skinwalker's original sacred significance. The legends, now stripped of their original meaning, are sold back to the public in an easily consumable format, feeding a growing appetite for macabre, without regard for the harm done to the cultures from which these stories originated. It is this very process, this reduction of profound cultural symbol into a mere tool of fear, that raises serious questions about the ethics of storytelling in the digital age. In the quest for viral success and cultural appropriation, the essence of the Skinwalker myth is often lost, and in its place is a sanitized version, one devoid of its original warnings and lessons, leaving only the haunting image of a creature that has been stripped of its soul, its significance, and its power. The Navajo voices, ancient and wise, have long echoed a solemn warning to those who would dare trivialize the fearsome figure of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii. These voices, steeped in the traditions of a people who have lived in harmony with the land for centuries, are not to be dismissed lightly, for they speak not just of the creature itself, but of the very forces that it represents. This is not a costume, they say, not a scary story for Halloween. These words are not uttered to dampen the spirits of those who seek harmless thrills, but to emphasize the deep and sacred nature of the Skinwalker legend, a nature that cannot be understood or reduced to mere superstition or spectacle. The Navajo people, who have lived with the knowledge of the Skinwalker for generations, understand that this being is far more than a mere figure of horror. It is a force of nature, a manifestation of transgression, a punishment for those who break sacred laws and abandon the natural order. To speak of the Skinwalker in the context of Halloween or as part of a costume is to completely misunderstand its nature and purpose, for it is not something that can be donned or discarded at will, like a mask or cloak. It is not a creature that exists merely to frighten or entertain. It is a manifestation of the darkest human desires, the desire for power, the desire to break sacred bonds, and the thirst for control over forces that should remain beyond human reach. The Navajo voice, firm and resolute, warns that the Skinwalker is not something to be taken lightly, not something to be casually invoked or dressed up for the amusement of others. It is sacred. It is dangerous. The Skinwalker, in its true form, is a being that operates outside of human morality, one who has crossed a line into forbidden territory, forsaking the natural order in pursuit of unnatural power. To even speak of it flippantly, to fashion it into a costume or a Halloween tale, is to risk calling forth a force that cannot be controlled, a force that does not respond to the simple rules of human playfulness. The Skinwalker, when invoked in jest or as a mere horror story, is a force that can ripple through the fabric of reality, disturbing the very balance between the physical and the spiritual. To take it lightly, to wear it as one would wear a costume for a celebration, is to disrespect the ancient forces that bind the world together. The Navajo people understand that the Skinwalker is not a story for the faint-hearted or the naive. It is a warning, a reminder that there are powers in this world that must not be trifled with, forces that remain beyond our understanding and control. These voices, echoing through the generations, urge respect for the old stories, for the sacred rituals, and for the deep knowledge that comes from living in harmony with the natural world. They remind us that to treat the Skinwalker as nothing more than a frightful tale is to dishonor both the creature and the people who have lived with the fear and respect it commands. It is not a game, it is not a costume, and it is certainly not a story to be told around a campfire to amuse the curious. It is a warning, wrapped in legend, wrapped in fear, that transcends time and place, urging those who hear it to be cautious, respectful, and aware of the dangers that lie in the shadows, in the spaces between the world we know and the world we dare not understand. Whether legend or truth, the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, stands as a profound symbol of the fragile boundary between light and shadow, human and beast, a being that traverses a thin line that separates the natural order from the unnatural, the known from the unknown, the safe from the dangerous. The Skinwalker is not merely a creature of folklore. It is a reflection of our deepest fears and desires, a being that is as much a symbol of the darkness within the human soul as it is a representation of the terrifying forces that lurk at the edges of the world we understand. The legend tells us that the Skinwalker is a person, once human, who, driven by the most base and corrupting desires, forsakes the sacred laws of nature and society in pursuit of power. This forsaking of human morality, this abandonment of the bonds that tie a person to their family, to their community, to the earth itself, leads to a transformation that is not merely physical but spiritual. The Skinwalker, in this sense, embodies the fragility of the boundary between the human and the animal. For it is said that through dark rituals, a person can shed their human form and take on the guise of an animal, adopting not only its shape but also its instincts, its hunger, its brutality. This transformation is not a simple metamorphosis, but a deep, irreversible corruption, one that erodes the very essence of what it means to be human. The Skinwalker, therefore, is not just a creature but warning, a cautionary figure that reminds us of the peril that lies in the rejection of the natural laws that govern human existence. It is a reminder that when we stray too far from the path of light, when we abandon the moral principles that bind us to the world of the living, we risk descending into a shadowed realm where the boundaries between humanity and the beasts of the earth become blurred, where the light of reason is replaced by the darkness of unchecked desire. The Skinwalker, then, is both a manifestation of the fear that such a transformation is possible, and a symbol of the moral decay that comes from embracing darkness over light. In its essence, the Skinwalker is a reminder that the boundary between light and shadow, human and beast, is perilously thin, and that once it is crossed, there may be no returning. It is this fear, the fear of losing oneself to darkness, that has allowed the Skinwalker legend to endure, to persist across generations, for it speaks to something universal, something primal, something that is as much a part of the human experience as the light and the shadow that define our world. Thus, whether it's true or merely a legend, the Skinwalker remains a powerful symbol of the delicate balance that governs the world, a symbol that warns us of the consequences that await when that balance is disturbed, when the line between light and shadow, between human and beast, is crossed and irrevocably shattered. The story of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, does not conclude with neatly wrapped answers or a satisfying resolution, as is often the case in folk tales, where the mystery is solved and the threat is vanquished. No, the tale of the Skinwalker ends with something far more unsettling, a warning, a stark reminder that power, no matter how alluring, always has a price, and that the cost of seeking forbidden power is one that can never be paid back in full. This is not a story of triumph or resolution, but a cautionary tale, one that echoes through generations, speaking not only of the Skinwalker, but of the eternal human desire to transcend the limitations of nature, to rise above the laws that bind us, and the horrific consequences that follow when such a path is chosen. The Skinwalker, in its essence, is a figure defined by the very essence of corruption, the corruption of the soul, the corruption of the body, and corruption of the spirit. The creature that stands at the end of this tale is not merely a monster, but the embodiment of the price that must be paid for forsaking humanity's natural boundaries, for allowing ambition, greed, and the thirst for power to guide one's actions. The tale teaches that the moment one crosses that boundary, whether through the dark act of murder or the pursuit of forbidden knowledge, there is no return, no redemption, and no escape from the consequences that inevitably follow. The price of becoming a Skinwalker, as the Navajo understand it, is not just a transformation into a beast, but the loss of one's soul, one's humanity, and one's place within the community. To seek power in this way is to sever oneself from the moral, spiritual, and social ties that connect an individual to the world and to others. And it is this loss, this irrevocable disconnection, that makes the Skinwalker's tale so disturbing, for it shows that the pursuit of power, when it comes to the cost of morality and sacred law, leads not to greatness but to ruin. In the end, the Skinwalker is not just a warning about the dangers of shape-shifting or dark magic. It is a warning about the temptation to seek power without understanding the cost, the price that must be paid for transgressing the natural order. The Skinwalker's tale is not one that offers comfort or closure, but one that lingers in the mind, unsettling and ominous, reminding us that, in the end, no power comes without a price, and that the price of darkness is always higher than one can ever imagine. The tale of the Skinwalker, naaldlooshii, a being both feared and revered, persists not merely as a story to frighten, but as a cultural anchor woven into the moral fabric of the Navajo people. This legend, one that has transcended generations, does not simply serve to entertain or chill the blood. It operates as a profound lesson, a cautionary tale designed to preserve the delicate balance between human nature and the darker forces that lurk just beyond our understanding. The Skinwalker is, at its core, a figure born of deep, unsettling transformation, representing the ultimate betrayal of the natural order. Through forbidden acts, such as the unthinkable murder of a loved one, the Skinwalker sheds its humanity and enters into a realm where the laws that govern both nature and society no longer apply. It is said that this transformation is not just physical, but spiritual. Once a human, the Skinwalker is now bound to the animal it mimics, losing its connection to the world of humans, entering a state where its actions are driven by primal instincts, not moral guidance. This loss of humanity, this corruption of the soul, is what makes the Skinwalker so terrifying. Its very existence is an affront to natural laws that bind the universe together, a symbol of what happens when the boundary between light and shadow is breached, when humanity's moral compass is shattered, and when the consequences of breaking these sacred bonds can no longer be undone. The Skinwalker story, therefore, is a grim reminder that power, when sought to the dark and forbidden avenues of the spirit world, comes at a steep price, and that this price is not one that can ever be repaid or undone. It serves as a chilling warning to those who might be tempted to transgress these boundaries, to those who might seek to wield power without understanding the costs involved. The Skinwalker is not a mere beast. It is a manifestation of all that is lost when one steps too far from the light. It is a being that represents the price of ambition unchecked by moral restraint, the inevitable result of those who seek to harness dark forces without paying heed to the repercussions. And yet, despite the terror it evokes, the Skinwalker remains a powerful cultural symbol, one that teaches the importance of maintaining balance, of respecting the sacred laws that govern life, and of never allowing pursuit of power to overshadow the need for harmony and human connection. Now, as we reflect on the Skinwalker's tale, it is essential to remember that these legends, as much as they are rooted in history, are not confined to the past. The Skinwalker, like the forces it embodies, continues to haunt the edges of our understanding, lingering in the shadows of our collective consciousness. Many may choose to dismiss it as superstition, as a relic of a bygone era, but the truth remains that, whether we choose to believe in it or not, the Skinwalker itself does not cease to exist. It operates not in the realm of belief, but in the realm of consequence, reminding us that there are forces in this world that exist beyond our understanding, and they are not bound by our disbelief. You don't have to believe in Skinwalkers, but that doesn't mean they don't believe in you. Once again, if you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe so we have more motivation to produce better quality products. And now, good night.